And we're back with the show. It's Gerald Glasser coming right back at you here from the Pop Culture Cosmos. Thanks so much for watching and listening. It is Xbox we're talking about after the debacle of last week known as Redfall, which came out to horrific reviews, glitches everywhere, many people just turning it off entirely because the game just is playing right there. I'll just say it right now, is not very much fun for most of the gamers that are out there. It's been a PR nightmare and disaster after another for Xbox. Not only do they have the issues with Redfall and it's the AAA game that we thought it was going to be, unfortunately becoming a disaster, plus also as well the impending thoughts on the maybe a final decision coming up in the near future after the initial bad news out of the UK on the acquisition proposed by Microsoft of Activision, which may or may now, which is looking right now not very good for Xbox. But we'll wait and see. Nothing is definitive yet, but right now it hasn't taken a good turn as we've talked about on the show. But here today to say all is not lost for Xbox out there. Unfortunately for me, it's looking harder and harder, but we'll see what happens. It is a good man indeed. He returns to us once again. He is on the road as we speak. My good friend indeed. It is TJ Johnson. And TJ, glad to have you back, my friend, on the road trying to defend Xbox once again.
Gerald, as always, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on this show. Looking forward to a great debate or just conversation. About the
Okay.
state of Xbox.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, my friend. I will say this. You know me, I have defended Xbox for years now. I said the
Yes.
Xbox One S was the best value in
Yes.
gaming the time it came out, and thought it was just incredible thing that was given to gamers, and not enough people took advantage of it. Then the Xbox Series came out, Xbox Series X, very powerful unit, the most powerful gaming console that's out there, even more so than the PlayStation 5. Both are tremendous, don't get me wrong, but both are able to go ahead and produce high quality games. Both have had very little problems as far as on any type of scale. So both are really doing well as far as from a mechanical point of view. PlayStation 5 has obviously taken a hold of the sales market, and Xbox has not been able to find its niche as of yet, based off the gaming prowess of a lot of games that have come out for the PlayStation 5 that have really hit pretty good with the marketplace. Xbox has not been that fortunate. And then you have the issues again with Redfall, which is for me really hard to see because I enjoy Xbox so much, and I've called Xbox Games Pass currently the best value in gaming. I still think the Xbox Series S, it takes a lot from the Xbox One S, and is also a great value in and of itself. I don't say this with glee or any joy, but Xbox is going through some really bad bumps in the road, my friend, and it really is time to be concerned if you're an Xbox fan.
Well, you're not wrong in any of those. I want to start off by saying that nothing that you said was incorrect factually or from a, a standpoint of just looking at the PR nightmare that has been the Xbox brand. That's not incorrect. Here's where I will say our thoughts differ. You have been a very staunch Xbox supporter, absolutely, but you have much more leaned heavily on the console, as you've already alluded to, with the great value in the Xbox One S, the Xbox Series S continuing that same trend, the Series S and X both being great consoles, X being the most powerful console on the market. Yeah. We know all the specs. We have to get into that. I, on the other hand, have been very firm in saying, and I stand by this, is that Xbox has been more concerned with their ecosystem as opposed to console sales. And what I mean by that is having the Xbox brand represented in every household. I have made my point very clear that Xbox has been on that. And I think that this further proves the fact, especially Phil Spencer's comments over the last week, exactly what I've been saying for the last 6 months to a year. They're not worried about console sales. And when I say not worried, they want console sales and they're not going to stop catering to the console players, but it's about the ecosystem. There's no way after losing that Xbox One generation, and let's just be abundantly clear, after losing that generation, there is zero way Xbox is ever going to take over a dominant place in the console marketplace. It's just not going to happen. It's too far gone. The PlayStation system has sold too many systems. First and foremost, the name is too recognizable. There's just no getting around that. Then you couple that with Nintendo and how untouchable they seem like they're able to be at this point. There's no getting around it. They are definitively in third place and will definitively be in third place for the foreseeable future. I don't see them making it out of this generation, or not possibly even the next generation, uh, out of third place. Losing that Xbox One generation was absolutely a death knell to their console sales. And Phil Spencer essentially said just that. He essentially said that there's no way we're going to outtake anybody in console sales. The fact that we started moving to a digital library during that generation, and that was a generation that the Xbox lost, was absolutely a gut punch. And Phil admitted to that, which is all Phil did. All Phil did was admit to the fact that that was the worst generation to lose. And because of losing that generation, now PlayStation has even more momentum than they had previously, because you've got all those people who have already committed to PlayStation and their ecosystem and their digital library content, and continuing that process into the next generation and the generation after that. So, of course, that's the one generation you did not want to lose, this transition to digital sales. Now, in losing that transition to digital sales with that last generation, or with those two generations ago, whatever, I forget at this point, is now going to become even more imperative. Excuse me. It's going to become even more imperative that as a brand, Xbox continues to show what value that they have to the gaming community by introducing and continuing this Game Pass, and showing that even if you don't have a console to play Xbox on, Xbox is the best brand to play games on, period. And that's by demonstrating more than just having console sales, software sales, ecosystem, having the ability to play it anywhere. These are all things that lean into Microsoft being the game system of choice for gamers everywhere, anytime, all the time. And that's where Xbox's primary focus needs to continue to remain. Now, it doesn't change the fact that they need to figure out these console sales, and they need to figure out this game development system that they have. Obviously, we know Redfall was already in development pre-acquisition, and we don't know how far in development it was prior to Xbox finally getting their hands on it and being able to do whatever it is they need to do with it. Starfield being one of those titles that are coming up big for the Xbox, and everybody knows that it's a huge Xbox title. And obviously Skyrim 6, whenever it does release, so on and so forth. These games are going to be built for the ground up for Xbox. And I think the beautiful thing about that is they'll be able to truly take advantage of the Xbox system. But the bad part about that is they're going to be heavily, heavily scrutinized, more so than any games for any other console this generation. More than any PlayStation game, more than any Nintendo game. They're going to be heavily scrutinized. So, because of that, you've got everyone taking extra time and being extra, extra cautious with the information that's getting out there in regards to, is Starfield going to be 30 frames per second? Is it going to be 60 frames per second? Is it going to be procedurally generated, whatever the case may be? There's so much information that we still don't know about Starfield, and this is supposed to be a console seller, not an overseller, but a console seller for Xbox. And there's still a lot of information that we don't know, and because it's becoming very, very late into the cycle, and because of the recent struggles of Redfall, which is not a terrible game by any stretch of the imagination, but that's neither here nor there, people are concerned, and people are rightfully concerned. What I will say is that I do believe that Xbox understands the position that they're in, at least according to Phil Spencer, and that they understand the concern that people are having, and that they're going to respond. What I will concede, for lack of a better word, is that Phil Spencer, if he hasn't been on a hot seat before, the seat's getting awful warm now. It's to the point where, he was a darling of the last generation by understanding where Xbox made their mistakes and admitting to it, and starting this whole PR campaign on how Xbox can be better. So he was a darling to the gaming community at some point, and then ushering in the Game Pass. This is all under Phil Spencer's leadership. So I get that. But sometimes we as Xbox, and I say we like I'm an Xbox person solely, but Xbox community members, players, want to see some fight. They want to see Xbox say, you know what, these games are going to be console exclusive. They want to go out there and see Xbox get these exclusive contracts the way that PlayStation does. They want to see fights. And I can understand when Phil Spencer admitted to being last in the console wars and kind of not admitting defeat, but admitting their position and understanding their position, where a lot of people will hear that, and that's not what they want to hear as an Xbox consumer. They want to hear fight. They want to hear acquisitions. They want to hear what they're going to bring to the table. I think what Phil Spencer did was take a very honest and open approach to it. And kudos to him. That's been his PR. That's been his shtick since he's gotten in the position. He's always been open and honest and kind of upfront about where they are. But it doesn't change the fact that some people in the Xbox community don't want to hear it. They want to hear the fight. They want to hear we just paid $75 million to have a game be exclusive to Game Pass for 6 months or whatever the case may be, to show that Xbox is not just rolling over and playing dead. Now, I think the release of Starfield, I think the release of ultimately Skyrim 6 and so on and so forth are going to be able to be the games that really prove the Xbox brand. But Xbox isn't dead yet, not by a long shot. And the name of their game is no longer console sales. It hasn't been for a while. It's now ecosystem, putting the Xbox brand in every home, and every TV, and every on every Wi-Fi device, on every cell phone. Is getting the brand of Xbox out there for everyone to be able to enjoy, regardless of where you are, regardless of what time it is, and regardless of how you typically play games. They want you to be able to say, hey, you might play games on a PlayStation, but Xbox Game Pass is here for you too.
Well, the thing I ask you is maybe that change. There should be a change in thinking. I think if that's the case, because what has not worked for them so far, especially trying to get the Xbox Games Pass over to a larger audience, has not worked so far. It's only worked to an extent where I think they got between 20 and 30 million subscribers, which, I think that's nice to start off with, but they need to elevate that to an even higher plane. And I think maybe if they go ahead and remind everybody that they have a serious console, but can support it with AAA games, first party games of their own, that I think will help reignite people's interest in it. But a lot, like you said, it relies on Starfield. And if Starfield can actually become that AAA game that people will be talking about for the near and long term, that's the thing. Starfield has to be that game now more than ever.
Absolutely. And as I said earlier, it does put an immense amount of pressure on Bethesda to deliver with Starfield, with Skyrim. And I think it's for better or for worse. It is what it is. Because of that pressure, though, that's why everything is so tight-lipped. We don't know much about the gameplay. I know we have the big showcase coming up on I want to say June,
yes,
19th or 6th or
sometime mid-June.
Yeah, sometime mid-June. I know we've got the big showcase coming up there where they'll be able to kind of really display what it is. And they need to have a really good turnout for that, because it's imperative that we know what we're getting our hands on. We do not, excuse me, I repeat, we do not want another No Man's Sky situation where the game is promised to be this open world game changer of the game, and where ultimately it ended up being pretty good.
Well, see, that's the thing, though. But the thing is,
there.
Yeah, what was not said in that initial introduction of No Man's Sky was the words 5 years later.
Yes, absolutely, and that's the problem that game ran into. So that's what we cannot. I keep saying we. That's what Xbox cannot replicate moving forward. Xbox cannot make those same mistakes that No Man's Sky did in regards to what consumers are expecting from release versus what consumers actually get from release. And I think Phil Spencer is the one to kind of usher that in, where he's been open and honest thus far. So I think he's the one that really gets to that this is going to boil down to, as far as being upwards and honest about where the game is and what the game is going to be able to deliver. And they've been pretty consistent saying that this is a game changer. A lot of talk out of their camp has said the same thing, but ultimately it's going to be up to the consumers, us, to be able to tell how much of a game changer this really is. I think the recent black eye with the acquisition, or the lack of acquisition through the UK, saying that no, we don't like this acquisition, which if you go and look at the reports and go and look at what the things that were said, it's really disheartening that they would actually say no to that, and for their rationale on these reports why they said no to it. Um, it smells of conspiracy, but I don't want to be that guy. At least not right this moment. Maybe in a different episode I'll be that guy, but right this moment I won't. With that black eye being so fresh and so recent, Xbox really, really desperately needs a win. And I think Starfield is in a very unique position to where people are so thirsty for a win that it's going to help elevate however good that game is. But whatever is bad about that game is going to be criticized very poorly, very, very much, very strongly by non Xbox players, PlayStation gamers, Nintendo gamers, people that can't really get with Xbox being a good brand. Uh,
Mhm.
so they really have to dot their I's and cross their T's. And I think Bethesda understands that. I think Phil Spencer understands that. And they're going to take the necessary steps to protect that game, protect that brand, and ensure that they deliver the best possible outcome for its consumers.
Well, I'm hoping for better times for Xbox and Phil Spencer. That's the last thing I want to talk about because Phil Spencer, again, you told me as the head of Xbox and that his time is definitely on the hot seat now after receiving so much love and affection from the gaming community for years now, and the gaming community being patient because they thought he is one of their own. And just him telling you to be patient, to be patient, to be patient. By the way, please be patient. I understand not all of it's, I had a conversation with someone just before we went on air in regards to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And, I understand not all of it's their fault on why the Marvel Cinematic Universe is in the state that it's in right now. Obviously, some of it's COVID, some of it's issues with just the way that things were going at that point in time in the world in the earlier part of this decade. I get that. And people are just starting, and companies are just starting to catch up to where they once were before 2020. But the thing is, though, at some point, you also have to realize what mistakes were made outside of what COVID can actually be blamed for. You can't throw a blanket over just COVID and just say it's all COVID's fault. You have to go ahead and say some of it's their miscalculations as well. Redfall, in the state that it's in, continuously, even after a lengthy delay of almost a year, still came out in such a haphazard and such a poor condition. I think that that's all on Xbox. You can no longer blame COVID for it. You have to go if you think this game is, and they do it. They have test reviewers. It's not like they know that this game wasn't going to come out with poor reception. You have individuals that you have working for you for the development studio that do mock reviews that can tell you how good or bad a game is. Most of them worked in the industry at some point in time. So they give you a heads up on what the review scores are like. And if you are Phil Spencer and you knew this thing was going to be a dud right out of the box, I would have pulled the plug on it or delayed it even a year before this comes out. So these are just some of the mistakes that they made. The fact that last year really didn't have much to speak on as far as Xbox exclusives. I think the fact that also that they have not promoted the Xbox Series itself to the point where they needed to go ahead and make it the preeminent system in the world of gaming. I think that's a misstep on their own. But again, with all the stuff that's going on, I don't know how much more. I do not know how much more goodwill Phil Spencer has left.
Well, I don't want to blame things on COVID too. I think we
I
need
mean,
to
you
get
can to
past.
an extent.
But here's what I'm saying. When was the acquisition between Bethesda and Microsoft completed?
It hasn't been completed yet.
I'm sorry. Bethesda? Yeah,
Oh,
that's
Bethesda was
completed.
21.
Yeah, that was 21. That was 2021, Gerald. We're in 2023. It hasn't been that long. Game development cycles typically last how long? 4 years,
Four to
5 years?
6 years. If
Yeah,
it's a Final Fantasy 30,
yeah, then it's going to be 20 years, right? But
yeah, okay.
but a typical game is 4 to 6 years in development cycles,
If
right?
it's Dead Island 2, it was 10.
We don't even want to talk about or Cyberpunk, right? We won't talk about
Yeah,
those.
yes.
Here's the point: Microsoft finally got the acquisition in 2021. It's 2023. It's been 2 years. Game development cycles are already well into their development prior to this acquisition.
Yeah, Starfield was something that was probably thought of and initially developed back in 2016 or 2017.
Yeah, possibly. But you look at something like Redfall. My point is, these things take time, and with that acquisition still being relatively fresh, yes, they could have said we're going to delay it, we're going to delay it, we're going to delay it. But how much longer can you polish a turd that wasn't designed for that system? It wasn't designed to take advantage of the Xbox and its capabilities. At some point, you got to almost say, we got to cut our losses and realign, almost like we were talking about, you and I were talking about with the Marvel Cinematic Universe and possibly looking at having to cut some movies. And I said Blade should be on the chopping block. You've got to learn where to cut your losses and refocus and realign your focus. And I think Redfall was one of those games where they got it polished to a state where, okay, this is playable. And again, I know I said it earlier, the game is actually fun to play. It's not a bad game to play in any stretch of the imagination. Is it perfect? No, not by any stretch. And I think that's been the Xbox brand, and that's why people are so frustrated. Are the games fun to play? Sure, they're fun to play, but they're not perfect, and they should be. And that's what everybody's frustration is. But the truth of the matter is, if you got the acquisitions officially on the 2021, and it's now 2023, and that game was released, that means you were on the back half to the last third of that cycle being completed prior to you and this acquisition. So you did not have a lot of time for transitioning and making sure that it's perfect for the system that you're now releasing it for. You didn't have a ton of time for that. So I get the frustration. I get the idea that they should be doing better. I understand that. I completely get it. But it doesn't change the fact that it has not been that long and that they have not had that much time with this recent acquisition yet. Um, I know Phil Spencer keeps preaching patience. I get it. And I know how frustrating it is to hear as a gamer. I get that too. But these things do take time. And turning a brand around does take time. And it cannot be understated how much of a blow it was to lose that Xbox One, PlayStation 4 generation. It really, 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 really hurt.
Well, but this has been going on for seemingly since that if infamous E3 of what 2013,
Yeah,
2014,
right.
when the heads
Always
of
on.
Sony
Yeah.
always on, must have
Always
Xbox
connected.
Connect, yeah, always
Yeah.
connected, which
And
also
that's when,
ruined the Connect. Which also
yep.
ruined the Connect, which would have been actually a great continuous system. A lot of people actually liked it, and unfortunately, when you've tried to force feed it on them, that's when people recoiled against it. But also the sharing and the DRM. The second those two heads of Sony gave the disc to each other, and this is how you share games on the
Yeah.
PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
That was all
Absolutely.
the that's what ended that war. That ended that battle at that point in time. But that's 10 years ago.
Uh huh.
10 years that
Uh huh.
Xbox has had a chance to, they've been constantly falling behind. There's only so much more falling behind. I think Microsoft, the heads of Microsoft, which is not Xbox, the heads of Microsoft will stand no longer.
You know what? You might be right. You might be right on that, Gerald. I'm not one to say that you're wrong. What I will say is that Microsoft understands that it's a long game. Microsoft didn't get to the position that Microsoft is in by playing a short game, and they understand that this is not an easy. This is not an easy, whatever you would say, a battle. This is not going to be an easy battle. It's not going to be easy. It's an uphill battle. But Microsoft understands what that process looks like. They don't get to be in the position that they are without understanding that process. And I'm sure at some point there may be consideration on saying, okay, well, maybe the Xbox brand as a console um, may not be something that they want to continue to put money into. And if that's the case, then so be it. Understanding that it has to survive on besides just the console sales. It's something that Sega had to do, something that it's not ideal, but it does happen. So is that a conversation that I'm sure that they have to have at some point? Yes, I think it's way too soon to pull that plug now. The Xbox brand is still pretty young. I mean, they came out in what, 2001, 2002. So we're still, they might be just legally able to drink now. Haven't been out as long as 21, 22, 23 years at this point.
You could tell me that, but then again, how many other console manufacturers have stayed in business? Sega, they've already been out by now. Then you talk about some of the others that have come and gone, from Panasonic to Engage to, the list goes on and on. I mean, had Amazon, as a developer, tried to give it a try, and they pretty much flatlined. Google tried to become a console maker with its own, obviously cloud gaming system that actually fell flat.
Right.
So, I mean, Xbox has been around for quite a while, my friend.
Well, let's see. So Sega's if let's do a little history lesson. Sega Genesis was released in what 1988 in Japan. So it was released in 1988 as the Mega Drive in Japan. And when was the last when this was the last console for Sega Genesis?
1997.
Let's find out. Let's find out. 97.
I'm gonna
Okay, so
guess.
19. It might be 97. It might be around that time because that was what the was that the Dream? That was no, because then you had the Dreamcast.
Hmm.
So Sega as a console, as a manufacturer,
It's
was from
discontinued
19.
in '99.
The Dreamcast was
No, the Genesis was,
okay. So that's the Genesis. But then we look at the Dreamcast. How long ago did that go? So if that was 99, the Dreamcast came out
and then the Sega
around
Saturn.
right Sega Saturn, Sega Dreamcast. So Genesis Sega was around for a while too. Was it around 20 years? I don't know that much. I haven't been able to do that much homework on it, but I know that it was
No,
around for quite a bit of time. I also know that Nintendo's been around for quite a bit of time. And again,
the
I
Saturn died after 5 years in 2000. I'll check on the Dreamcast for you.
gotcha. So I guess my point of saying that it was a late comer to the game market, trying to get a foothold in a market that already had the Sony PlayStation being a monster powerhouse that what it was, the Nintendo console being the monster powerhouse that it was and continues to be. So it came in third place, and it's maintained third place. Well, it kind of started going up in the Xbox 360 generation.
Yep,
Um,
it had its opportunity to go ahead and
it did, it did.
after the Wii died down, and
It
it
did. You're absolutely right. But that also, again, if we're being honest, that wasn't Phil Spencer. That was a different head of Xbox.
oh yeah, Don Matrick, which
That was Don Matrick.
single
Yeah.
handedly ruined the Xbox at that point in
Yep.
time. So I agree.
Absolutely. So I believe, I guess I say all of that to say I am not quick to say that Xbox is dead. I am not going to I think that the talk of it being a dead platform or a platform that's going out to pastures is very premature. Um, and goes to show that we as a country have this we want it now mentality, and
You
it's
can't
not.
blame the Xbox gamers. They've kind of
I
wanted it now
can't
for years.
I can't blame them, but I think the Xbox gamers have to realize that the market is not as easy to break ground in, uh, especially in a market that you came in third place. You had a great a potential run in the 360, and then they kind of crapped the bed and had a PR nightmare of a release for the Xbox One, and they had to completely do an about face and turn around a lot and focus on a lot of other things to try to get the good grace of the gaming community back. So that blow that they took at Xbox for Xbox One cannot be understated. That was a huge shot. As you mentioned, there's nothing else that I remember about that E3, but Sony getting up there and saying, this is how you game share, and you pass the disc from one person to the next. That was by far, it was body blow after body blow that Xbox has not been able to get up from.
Well,
And
too.
when
Hmm.
you realize how hard of a hit that really was, and the ramifications that E3 show had for the Xbox brand, and for and what Xbox ultimately did to itself, and what Phil Spencer's trying to dig out of, it can't be understated how difficult of a position he's in. It really can't, and it does not bode well for Xbox. And I understand how the community feels, but he came in and took on a job that by no means is he supposed to be successful in, because he just was not set up for success. It's like giving somebody a rigged deck of cards and asking how come they can't win. He
Well,
was not set up
again,
for success at all.
I think that the mixed messaging, by the way, the Dreamcast is 3 years. Again,
Gotcha.
the mixed messaging, the fact that they have not blasted this out there with this generation, the previous generation, how good of value the Xbox is compared with speaking to even the Nintendo Switch itself has been a key point in why I think that the Xbox has underachieved, at least in this past decade. So, We'll see. I mean, again, I'm holding out hope. I mean, we're going to probably get a lot of great announcements now. Things that they probably weren't going to go ahead and showcase off or even announce. They're probably going to have to announce here upcoming next month. So
I
they're
don't
probably going to
know.
have.
I'd be
I
careful
think
with
they're.
that too. I
Well,
wouldn't
I
go
think they're
put
going to
stuff
have to.
out there.
I think they have to go ahead and do everything they can to reignite the faith of the fans out there. That's my personal opinion. I think that
Yeah.
they have to go ahead and do everything they can to reignite the individuals that are out there that have stood by Xbox for so long now. They have to reignite their belief that Xbox is going to do something good for them sometime soon.
Yeah, we will see. I think that they need to be very cautious about what they release, especially if it is not ready. I think I know for me as a gamer, one of the things that frustrates me the most is when they're talking about these games that are still 7, 8 years out, 6 years out, 5 years out. Uh, as we mentioned, I think a couple of shows ago, or a few shows prior, I'm almost 40. By the time some of these games come out that they're going to be announcing, I'm going to be mid 40s for some of these games. That's a long time to ask people to keep waiting. So I don't want them to be putting out information that they are not really, really focused on delivering, um, and delivering in a very timely manner because we've done that before.
I won't even comment how old I'd be when that comes around. So we won't go there. But once again, it's my good friend TJ Johnson. TJ, and I know you got to go ahead into work, my friend. I'm so glad that you and I, this early in the morning, 2 o'clock my time, 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock yours.
Right.
Hopefully, things are going to be a good day for you and out there. And hopefully, you will have an excellent day, my friend. Hopefully, we will have good news to report on Xbox. I want the Xbox to succeed just as much as you do, just like I want the
Yes.
PlayStation and Nintendo to succeed.
Absolutely.
And I don't think they'll have an issue, especially Nintendo, with Zelda coming out here in a matter of days. So I don't think that'll be a problem for them. PlayStation, of course, they're riding high right now off their sales. So definitely looking forward to seeing what Xbox can do to rebound in this market once again.
Absolutely, G. Thanks for having me on, brother. It's always a good time we get to talk Xbox.
Always, my friend. Let's not even go to Marvel right now. Come on, that's another argument altogether.
All
Uh,
together.
Altogether, indeed. But it is my good friend TJ Johnson. Always glad to have him here right away, anytime, day or night, late night or early morning, whatever way you want to slice it, right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos.